Yeah, okay. I think we're just going to get started and we'll go from there.
Okay.
So. All right, welcome everyone to Know Your Audience, the second masterclass for Content Marketplace. This is Leah Hoyer, and I will be here with Tanya Brushatsky talking about knowing your audience for the content that you're making. As you're getting settled in, here's some things that you're going to need. You'll definitely want to have something to write with and on. That can certainly be your laptop, but since you're going to also be watching this at the same time, you may want to do something separate. Definitely have in mind one content concept that you're really excited about, because it will be good for some of the exercises for you to be thinking about that particular idea. As we discussed in the first masterclass, most of us are very creative people with plenty of ideas, and so part of it is it can be hard to really focus on one of them, but make sure that you're doing that, and then definitely be willing to question some of those. We're going to have some exercises and discussion, lots of stories about people who've tried to do certain things with audiences, and hopefully you'll get a lot out of that and be learning from that as well. So certainly, let's also just talk for a moment about Content Marketplace. It's going to be happening the first Thursday and Friday of October, the 3rd and 4th. And it is the big culmination of what these masterclasses are leading up to. It is the place where people who are interested in taking their independent content creations and turning that into a business are going to come hear a lot of great people talking. Tanya will actually be there talking. Along with plenty of other really amazing discussions, immersive experiences, chances to get feedback on your work. We're having an award show, lots of other great things, but really our mission is to inform, connect, and elevate people who are interested in taking their voice and their independent content ideas and really getting those out to a broader audience, making money with it, which we all love, and building a broader base and audience and networking with other people who are doing things that are similar, because working in that creative community, it's so useful to have other people to bounce ideas off of. All right, so we are now, like I said, in our second content masterclass. So this is understanding your audience. There will be time for you to ask questions. There's a chat running, so you can ask questions at any time, but we'll probably stop at certain points to actually look at those and take questions, and there will be more time at the end. So if there are things that are coming up that you have a burning follow-up question on something we said, you're more than welcome to look at that. All right, so let's dive into understanding your audience. The who is your audience question. Well, let's go ahead and we're gonna start talking about this quite readily. So, oops. I want to there we go. Hi. So yes, let's do a bit of introduction first to the people who are there. I've actually met, I think, a lot of you if you attended the first masterclass. I led that one. My name is Leah Hoyer. I've worked in entertainment industry for 20 years or more now. No, there's no way. And I've worked at companies in television and in video games, certainly worked in a lot of online content as well. So combination of companies like Disney, Xbox, Telltale Games, but also I worked at a company called Levity that did a lot of comedy and online content and other pieces. And so I come from more of the creative executive who looks for people who've got these ideas and helps them build into a bigger brand, bigger space, work through that. And Tanya brings a really interesting perspective. Tell us about you.
Sure. I was a producer for a long time, and I was also a creator, and I'd go back and forth between the two. Had a couple of wins, and then they didn't go anywhere, which as creators happens, and then you just eat some ice cream and keep going. And then I kind of producing kind of took over, and I started producing for Larry King, and I was tasked with making him cool on the internet. So we worked. It worked, right? Is he cool? He's cool, right?
He's cool in that, like,
yes,
Orville Redenbacher way.
You know,
in a hipster.
No, I get,
like, yeah.
He was great. He knew he was out of his depth, and he just let us do whatever we needed to. He didn't understand why we were making him do certain things, but he was down.
Nice.
Yeah.
And it worked.
I hope so. I mean, his
Yeah.
shows. So I helped transition him from CNN to Hulu. It was the first Hulu original show.
Yeah.
Larry King Now. That's what it's called. It's still going, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we did a lot of really cool influencer things with him to try and promote him or alert younger audiences to who he is and that he is now digital.
Nice.
So did some really innovative things there. And then just started working with digital production companies and fell into this whole influencer marketing world. So I now have a company called Casting Influence. I work with influencers in many capacities, booking, casting, hiring them to promote things, events, anything you need an influencer to do, we can make that happen.
Nice. So Tanya is a person who many of you as content creators, especially if you're earlier on in your podcast or your web episodes or your short filmmaking or what have you, are hoping to one day sort of connect with a person like Tanya who can also help grow your business, put you in connection with people who are booking for conferences, looking for events that promote certain things. But a really big part of that, and that's why we're here to talk today, is for those to work, the audience for your content needs to line up with a need on other areas. And so it's so important for people to really understand who their audience is and understand how to make content that then builds that audience into a strong, vibrant, active, and even sort of self-promoting group, which is great. So, so we're going to dive into this a bit. First off, and this is something that I think we will be talking about quite a bit, but the idea is, okay, you are for sure, you have an audience, but who is it? Okay, well, here's a big hint. Oh goodness, this is not. Yes, okay, there we go. Big hint, it isn't everybody. And I would say that that's one of the big mistakes that a lot of people make when they're sort of thinking about what their idea is. They want to come up with an idea that their significant other, their best friend, and their grandma and the stranger down the street all are going to fall in love with. And granted, there are a few things that do that, maybe in hugely mainstream media, like some of your biggest blockbuster films do what we call in the industry 4 quadrants kind of focus, which is men, women, old, young, lots of different ages. But once it starts to get into a content entrepreneur space and you're really looking at, hey, I'm going to do something on YouTube, I'm going to post short videos on Instagram, I'm going to be making short films, or I'm going to have a podcast, it doesn't need that. And in fact, what you really need are some rabid fans early on who are going to talk about it.
Chris Hardwick talks about this a lot, where he tried to please everyone for years and years and years and just did these projects that were, broad. He'd host a show that wasn't really something he loved, or he would write something. And then he just decided to embrace his nerddom. Nerd, is that a word? Nerd?
Sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it took off. And he launched Nerdist, and then Legendary bought it. And now he's, he is a well-known nerd. He loves what he does. And his audience is very specific to those things. And I think if you look up some of his more recent interviews, he talks about it almost every time, that once he decided, screw it, I don't need to please everybody. I'm just going to do what I want to do and what I enjoy.
Yeah.
Here we are.
And that really could be such a good lesson for people to learn too, is your passion for something absolutely makes its way into the media that you're creating.
Absolutely.
If you're kind of like, oh, okay, I feel like I'm doing this because I'm supposed to do it, you're not going to have anywhere near the excitement, passion, and also it's going to get old for you. It's going to feel like so much work than it needs to, because if you're going to be putting out 1 or 2 major releases every single week, say, and you're doing it on something that you feel is there to please other people, that can be just taxing. And a few months into it, you're going to probably start slipping some of those. You're like, yeah, I was doing it 2 days a week, but now I think I'm just going to do one.
Right.
Or maybe I'll do it every other week. Or I'll just miss this week because,
Yeah, and I meet a lot of kids now who, teens or 20-year-olds. I actually met one a couple of nights ago, and he said, I want to be an influencer. Like, what does that mean? What do you want to, who do you want to influence? What do you want to do? And I don't understand. There's a lot of media around, there's a lot of press around the word influencer and the culture and the content creator / influencer space. But I think there's this feeling now where I want to be an influencer and I'm just going to start pumping out content. It doesn't really work. So to this topic, know who you're going to be influencing.
That is, yes, absolutely. And, starting with your passion is a really good place to go, because I think it is always easier for people to create content when they themselves would be the audience for it. Certainly, you don't have to do it that way. If you're excited about something else, I, for years, developed animated shows for Disney and Disney Channel and ABC. And obviously, I'm not a 9-year-old girl, and I wasn't at the time either. That being said, I did love animation, but I had to be very aware of who that audience was. And I was excited about making content for that audience. So it's not that you can't make content for an audience that you love, particularly say you have children and you want to make content that is for them, or there's someone else that you love in your life that you sort of see, hey, there's a need here and I can make something for them. But if you really start with something that you are passionate about and look to that group of your friends who are also passionate about it, I think that's when you will find those places where, okay, I know who this audience is. I can start to look at this and I can build something that I can go out and have coffee with these people that I love, bounce some ideas off of them, and it becomes a much easier process of defining what it is that you really love.
And a big buzzword at any conference about this topic is authenticity.
Yes.
Which is, I think, what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. But, saying the word, I want to turn it into a drinking game at this point. Anytime somebody says authenticity, you just want to drink. But it's true. Being authentic in creating your art, whatever it is the key. And then finding the audience that will connect with that is much easier.
It's true. Like, what we actually didn't mention is we're both right now in San Diego. We're at Comic-Con right now, which is why we're in a hotel room. Don't you love this wallpaper? It's delightful, right? Yes.
Oh, it's not even wallpaper.
No, it's kind of like a upholstered wall. But there's so much madness and craziness going on out there, and you get so many of these people though who are super excited to come for that thing that might not even, you get a lot of people dressed up as Wonder Woman. You get a lot of people dressed up as, this year in particular, Spider-Man, because, rest in peace, Stan Lee. But you also get folks who are really excited about some niche thing that some comic book creator, has a circulation of, say, 5,000 2 years ago, but now people are dressing up as their characters, and believe me, that's a walking advertisement. But that largely came out of the fact that some person loved comics, they loved this superhero or whatever it was that they were making. They went into, much like you were talking about the Chris Hardwick thing, they went in and followed their heart and their focus. But we are seeing the gamut here. When you go onto the Comic-Con floor, there are some booths that are for Marvel, and everyone knows Marvel. Right. You can't possibly have not seen, even if you haven't paid for a ticket to the movies, you are aware of who Iron Man is and who Thor is and all these characters. But down to, there's places in Artist Alley who are, people have a little slice of a table creating their own art. But even those people, because of what they're choosing, many of them then have lines in front of people wanting to buy their latest prints this year, wanting to get people to sign things. And that's because, again, they've really followed something that they love and they believe in, and they found enough people to do that. And I think that's one of the big lessons from especially this awesome digital and social era that we're in, is almost everyone has access to the internet. Almost everyone has a phone that can get on and search things, that can follow and like things. And when you've got that base of, 8 billion people, finding 100,000 is daunting, but it is doable, and you don't need to do it with something as big as a concept as Marvel. You can do it with a concept. I have
Marvel started as a
teeny tiny little thing.
So
yeah, it is absolutely possible. And I have a friend who, I think I brought this up in the last masterclass, who is a triathlete, sort of. Like, he does it because he has a love-hate relationship with it, but it's become a huge part of his social life. And it's become such a part of how he kind of retains balance. And so he did a podcast called Transitions that was all just about triathlons. And transition is a triathlon term about sort of how you go from the swim to the bike. You go through a transition and you change your clothes and all of that. Mm-hmm. But it was also about him coming back into it now that he had a new job, he had a new baby. He was trying to sort of balance all these things. And some of it is about triathlons and his training that day, but so much of it then just relates to his real life and how there's so many analogies to it. You know what? There are millions of triathletes on the planet. And so even though most of us aren't that, I mean, I've done it, but most people don't, you still can get a really rabid following. No? Okay. Well, maybe we'll convince you. You should listen to the podcast and then maybe you'll like it. So those are places and examples of how you can look to something that was small. Have you also seen, are there any other great examples that people that say you've worked with that you were like, that's quirky, but they have a big following because?
Absolutely. So Matthew Patrick is one of my favorite people on the internet. He goes by Matt Pat. He's got a couple of huge YouTube channels at this point. Game Theorist was his first one. Mm. Then he went to Film Theorist. I think he has another sort of spin-off of that, and hopefully he'll be at the conference in October to talk about it. Hopefully. So he started as a data analyst. We actually worked together at Defy Media. May it rest in peace if you're familiar with Defy Media. He was the stats guy. He just looked at all the videos and all the, Twitter accounts that the company ran for creators. And he was very, very good at knowing what does well, what doesn't. He started taking the things he was learning, and he was always interested in not specifically gaming, even though he started Game Theorist. He knew games did really well. However, he was really interested in science. So he took, I don't know if you know his content. So he took games and he would do these breakdown videos of how they do certain things, how it relates to science or physics, or the physics of a game, or various scientific things. I sound like very scientific things. He just breaks down video games in a very interesting way. So it's really a science show under the guise of a gaming show. And he just blew up. He blew up really fast. And back when I was writing, I actually wrote a couple of episodes for his Film Theorist channel, and I broke down how to win an Oscar. So if anybody has a question, I know
you got the formula for winning an Oscar.
2 weeks, head down. I do. So he's a really interesting example because he knew at the time anyway. Now it's more accepted to be a science channel on YouTube or a science person.
This was early in that phase.
This was early. He was interested in science, but he knew he had to sort of bring people in another way. So he did it through games.
That's a really interesting strategy too, is I've got this passion, but in terms of sort of growing and reaching out, which is something that I think most people are interested in, is, okay, you've got one core audience that is going to love the science regardless, but how might you reach people who don't know that they're going to love the science?
I have another example actually of a girl I'm speaking to right now about something. Her name is Spanky Valentine, and she is this really eccentric musical performance artist.
Ah,
Amazing clothing, amazing makeup, but original music's really hard to do on the internet. So she also has a love of makeup and fashion. So she started, now she's known as a beauty person, which to me is crazy when people mention her to me as beauty. And I'm like, no, 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 she's a musician. But then I realized she used her love of beauty to bring people in to see her music. So she does one beauty video, then one music video, then one beauty video, then one music video.
that's a really interesting, yeah, great place.
And
But she loves them both
she does love them both.
because, like,
Yes.
I think a lot of people are like, oh, people who talk about makeup application techniques and the new products that come out, that's really hot. So I should do that. Well, if you're not a person who wears a lot of makeup,
Yeah.
that should not be the thing that you go after.
Right. Right.
Okay.
So yeah, she does love them both. And I think her first love is clearly music and performance. How do you get people to see it?
Yeah.
She took the beauty route. You could take the cover route if you're a musician, for instance. You do one cover, one original, one cover, one original.
Huh.
And the
Excellent.
cover, why people do that, if you don't know, is the SEO that comes with that. So what's a popular song right now? Oh God, I'm gonna date myself if I say one. I don't know, let's say just whatever Justin Bieber's new song is. If you do a cover of that, people are searching for it might come across yours, and then they can see other things you're doing, your original music.
Yeah, SEO, for those who are not, it stands
Yeah.
for search engine optimization.
Yeah.
And so for folks who have content, that is actually an area you really need to start familiarizing yourself with.
And if you're posting your content on YouTube, remember it is the second largest search engine. So it works the same as a Google search.
So putting in a lot of keywords in your
Thank you. Yes.
description is really important. So
Exactly.
that making it easy for people to find you when they're going into the little search bar is incredibly important. And
even more important than that is the title. The search on YouTube favors title, then goes to hashtags or keywords. Sorry, keywords. So if you're doing a Justin Bieber cover, spell it out. Justin Bieber song cover, whatever the song title is, and then play with the keywords. Like if you have something else in that video, throw it in there.
Yeah. An elephant walks through, because I'm sure we can all afford
Put
an
an
elephant in our video.
Could
We
be
could
an
animate one.
Animated elephant, could be a VR elephant, or whatever.
But then elephant fans will come flocking to you. And it's not obviously as easy as that. But if you are neglecting your search engine optimization, you're really missing out on a chance for things. And it really is the core of why people in Instagram, for instance, put hashtags on things. Or in Twitter, if you are hashtagging something that has other followers for it, you'll notice that your Instagram, it's the same principle, your Instagram gets likes from people you don't know. Maybe you're even all of a sudden getting some follows from people you don't know because of the fact that you put those things in there. Same thing applies to, say, YouTube videos. Yeah. Or within different podcasts sort of streaming services, they do the same sort of thing. Like if you know the exact title, you're going to be able to find it. But also if you are sort of looking for science stuff, you can just put in science and a whole bunch of them will pop up. If you don't have science anywhere in your description, you're going to miss the chance for new people to find you. So you want to think really clearly about what your headline is.
Yes, your headline. And there are tools also that'll help you optimize your keywords. You can Google it, or I can Google it and tell Leah after. There are many, many tools for all of these things we're talking about. There are tools that'll help you understand which keywords are being searched more than most in your category, and which keywords you should put in your description, or even hashtags. Which hashtags are being searched, and just a quick little note on that. If we're talking about Instagram, when you're putting in hashtags, it'll tell you how many other hashtags are in that category, and sometimes you'll see 13 million. I would say mix it up. Don't put don't let all the hashtags be 13 million ones, because then it's really hard to find. Find a couple of hashtags that are appropriate but have 100,000 or a couple of 100,000 or less. So it's more specific to what.
It's more likely when
Yeah.
somebody's searching that specific thing that your picture will actually be towards the top.
Right.
And you can find it. That's actually a really good tip. I hadn't thought about it that way. I think intuitively I was like, well, I want to go with the one that like
Right.
everybody's following,
Absolutely.
you know? So the one that has 100 million
Right.
posts that have been about dogs of Instagram,
Right. And then
which I use a lot.
Me too. Me too. But then the biggest people on Instagram who have that hashtag will pop up first.
Yes.
So if you see a hashtag that's like, I don't know, 50,000, do it.
You're much more likely
Yeah.
to be at the top of that. Oh, that's a really interesting tip. Thank you for that. I'll lock that away.
Yeah. If you ever see, sometimes people will misspell a particular word, but it's very common. So you'll misspell a hashtag and 230 will come up. And I'm always like, oh, let me see who else misspelled.
Excellent. All right. So let's talk a bit more about, I am going to back to, so you can look at other things other than just our fun faces. And hopefully you are aware that on Zoom, you'll see us in a small window in the corner. If you would rather be looking at whatever we're doing with our fun hand gestures rather than the slides, you always can make that your primary view. So hopefully you're playing around with this a bit.
I will try to use my hands more.
No, oops.
Keep doing that. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. But trying to get this to move forward is, there we go. We want to talk a little bit now about identifying your fan, and one really good ways, like who are your fans, is to create an avatar. This is very much sort of a gaming kind of thing, which is the world I come from. But you know, if you're in an RPG and you make a character create, you can make them look like whatever you want to. But really defining and thinking about your ideal fan as an actual person out there, because it does make creating content for that person a really sort of visceral experience, because you start to think of them as a character and a real human and a friend. And to be honest, it can actually be your friend. Like if Tanya and I shared a love of Parcheesi, and I wanted to make,
Sure.
yes, most people here don't even know what Parcheesi is. It's a board game that I swear my grandmother probably made, or loved. But, you know, if I wanted to all of a sudden make strategy videos for awesome moves you can do in Parcheesi, okay, if we talk about it all the time, she might actually be my ideal fan avatar. And it's okay to use a person that you know is out there, but it's also okay to be like, you know, there is this type of person, and I want to encapsulate them into one human, so that I'm kind of thinking and can ask myself in the future, would this person actually sort of enjoy this? Or as I'm starting to make little decisions about, well, I could do this with a pink background or a blue background. I mean, you can start to get into that space and refine content. Really, you want to be thinking about some of these, just go through an exercise, like picture your ideal fan and really what they're looking for in their content. And with that, you know, again, draw from your own experience. If you're passionate about this thing, maybe that's also what you're thinking about, what your group of friends who are also always talking about this particular thing, what would they love to see that they think would be really interesting? Is it celebrity interviews about this? Is it tips and tricks on how to do it better? Those pieces, like what are they kind of looking for? And to that regard, like many of the things we've talked about, that's the substance. That may be what learnings you get out of it.
Yeah.
But so much of that is also the delivery mechanism. Do they want that delivered in a really fun and funny way?
Mm-hmm.
Do they want it to be tongue-in-cheek and ironic? Do they want you to, you know, should you be wearing goofy hats, or should you be taking this much more seriously because they take it seriously?
So I have a really fun story having to do with this.
Excellent.
And bringing it back, coincidentally, is I was working with Nerdist on their SVOD called Alpha, bringing in talent to create some content for what they believe their audience is. And I brought in a lot of comedians because Chris Hardwick's background, he's a comic. And there's this one comic who I love, and he's odd. He's an odd duck. And I brought him in, and he pitched something that was amazing. So he loved, and he's a little older. I'd say he's probably in his I don't know how old this audience is. How old is this audience?
It's probably about our age, so
Okay.
a little younger for sure. So 27 and younger is
Cool,
what we're
cool,
saying.
cool.
Yeah.
So he grew up with Atari and arcades, and he loved old video game music, specifically
Ah.
that MIDI sound.
Yeah.
And he shot a pilot that he showed us that was amazing. So he loved it so much, he shot an American Bandstand type show with video game MIDI music. So who's the audience for that? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It might be out there. So he was so passionate about it. Might be. I mean, watching it. This show was
totally
watching that show. I couldn't take my eyes off it because everybody's dancing and the music's like MIDI music from your Atari game, from or whatever. So he's super passionate about it. He was like, I'm going for it. I don't know if there's an audience for this. If I love it, somebody else must love it. So that's very targeted. So pretty much anyone in the world who's into that music will watch that show, even if it's
because there isn't a lot of that content out there.
Right.
Yeah.
But also to, let's say, a network executive, that's not big enough. But to an individual content creator, let's say there are only 150,000 people who would like that. But that's 150,000 people that are going to watch that every single time that show comes out, that an episode of that comes out.
Absolutely. And that is a big enough audience for sure to start to do things that can monetize.
Right.
You can potentially for, future video game conferences, you could be paid to come and do a thing and or people may buy your CDs that you put together. People may buy your, all of that.
CDs too. He sold music CDs from the show.
Yeah, downloads. I mean, even if a person's just downloading a song at 99 cents, if you get 50,000 people to do that, I want that money, don't you?
I'm gonna find a link to that pilot.
Okay.
I think it was on somewhere. I think it was on.
Very cool. So yes, you're starting to think about what would that user look for? Then I would build a user profile. Actually give this person a name. Find a picture on the internet. Take a picture of Tanya. She's your user avatar. Give them a city that they're at, a profession, an age, their hobbies. Really understand what it is that they're interested in, and so that they start to seem really real. And then ask yourself, how would that person enjoy your content? Because this is really key. You might actually start thinking that you're going to do this podcast once a week and it's going to be 2 hours each time and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, you know what? No, really these people, they're taking the subway and they might have 10 minutes at a time to do it. So I might want to break this up into chapters where they can feel like they've done something that they've experienced. And it really is important to think about what is the lifestyle like of this person.
And you can also experiment. You can do the same thing in different ways and see what works better with the people who are already watching or listening to you, and then adapt.
Absolutely. Because a lot of people will talk about, as you're figuring out how well they enjoy this content, it is great to experiment because people will say, I used to put things out on Tuesdays and then I moved it because everybody said Tuesday was the great day to put everything out. I don't know why that's become the wisdom, because I think it probably made sense back when there was a time when there were no schedules around these things.
Right.
But then now that everybody puts everything out on, say, a Tuesday, then you just go, no,
too much.
Yeah,
too much.
Maybe your person really only has the time to do it on Sunday, so you try putting it out on Sunday, and play around with that and see where your numbers start to spike, and see if it's better to put out shorter bursts of content more frequently or longer bursts, on just a regular basis. There's a whole bunch of ways to play around with the way that you disperse it. You might even want to play around with different platforms. If you are, a podcaster or a streamer, there are a lot of possibilities out there for things. And so,
and I want to add to that, the platforms is, don't be afraid to try new platforms. All the big creators I know, try them early because you don't know which ones are going to take off.
Mhm.
And it takes, let's say, a brand a year or 2 years to catch up. So for instance, right now, anytime I talk to a brand, I suggest we include it with YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook and all the standard ones, but TikTok, right? It is huge, but a brand probably won't won't jump on that for a while. It takes them a while. So it gives you time to build your profile on that platform. But like right now, TikTok is taking over. I think it's more downloads than Instagram.
Wow.
It's a younger audience. So if your audience avatar is slightly younger, if you're doing I don't know, music covers or if you're doing I don't whatever the kids want right now. If you're doing video game related things or music or animation, you'll find that audience on TikTok or Twitch if you want to live stream something. So there are a lot of platforms out there, and it does feel daunting to try them all. But if you're starting to hear of a platform a couple of times, give it a try, because it might take off and you might be an early user of it and build an audience on that platform.
Yeah, and I think much like anything else sort of creative, there are also certain platforms that just sort of you will take to more readily. They just sort of feel more natural to you. Certainly, like, I have an animation background, so I did a lot of art classes, and I was amazed to find that one of the mediums that I liked the most, so I was really glad somebody pushed me in it, was like pen and ink. You would take a pen and dip it into a well and do like portraiture and stuff with it in a way that I never would have tried that had a class not made me do it.
Wow.
Okay, but then once I tried it, I was like, oh, this works for me on some level. The same kind of analogy will be there with a lot of platforms. There's certain things that just feel like, okay, I get this one intuitively. This makes a lot of sense for me, and therefore it probably makes a lot of sense for your content, especially if your content is the thing that you're passionate about. So, play around with them. It is a really good idea. And just to get back to this, what you want to do is, this is a cycle. Like, you start off thinking, okay, I think this is the person. Now you go, how do they enjoy it? Then think about your content and sort of go back through that. There's also the case that it is okay to have more than one ideal fan avatar. And in fact, like, we also, the marketing world or other places also call them like user stories. Like, this is maybe your primary user story, but you might have a couple other fan avatars that are maybe not the core rabid ones, but they are going to be their sort of satelliting. And you want to make sure that you're doing enough for all of those. And that's how it ultimately, you start to build on something without alienating this first person, this first core avatar. How do you then start to find folks who have enough overlap that you can throw in bits of content for them that allows it to grow?
Like, if I'm your user avatar, I want dogs, but I'll also watch science. And if I'm particularly interested in how to do a certain nail technique, I will also want,
Oh my goodness, we're gonna make a video stream about giving dogs manicures.
You have no idea how much I would enjoy that.
Okay, well, you were there for the beginning of this right now. But following these sort of steps can be really, really useful. All right, so we actually talked about this in the very last one, is you also then want to be thinking about who is doing something similar, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, this is a world that has a lot of things that are subtle differences from one another. And the world of online media and content entrepreneurship, it's really not an us versus them space. Like, there are people who get really excited about shoe unboxing videos and will watch 20 different people unbox shoes. Like, it's not about, oh, I am now totally loyal to, Sally Shoe Unboxer. Yeah. I will absolutely, well, maybe she's my favorite and I found her first, I'm now going to find all these other people that do it. And so it is good for a different way. Previously we talked about, but how are you unique and how are you special? And that's still important, because you want to have a thing that makes you stand out. But it is really good to be very aware of your space.
Right. And if Mark Zuckerberg didn't want to challenge MySpace, that was pretty much the same thing at the time, we'd never have Facebook, really, I guess, right? I mean, MySpace did it first, well, maybe second. MySpace did it second, and then nobody really knew about Friendster. But, right?
Yeah, no, I didn't have a Friendster.
I didn't either. I knew it existed, but I never signed up. So yeah, MySpace let's pretend did it first, and then Facebook did it better. That's another way to look at it.
Absolutely. And they're really, I mean, somebody could certainly come along and now do a new Facebook, but you've got to do something really different now.
Yes.
And that's the part of this that, you know, how would you be better? That sort of last question up there for your target audience. How would you be better than them? It's great to learn, look at them, and particularly for this topic, what are they doing to reach audience? And you can mimic, you can borrow, you can copy those things. They're strategies. Copy strategies all you want. Like, don't reinvent the wheel. You don't want to copy their content because that's going to leave you with nothing that exciting, but look at how they do their strategies. And but then if you are going to take on something that is really big and out there, you do want to make sure that you have a differentiating factor that feels really exciting and cool and, you know, different to your ideal fan avatar. So, all right, we are getting close to wrapping up here. So I'm going to come back out of the sharing and just see if there are, before we kind of leave with any parting words of wisdom, are there any questions that people have and would like to talk about? If so, we can take some, and otherwise we will just sort of wrap up with final thoughts.
Yeah.
Anyone? Okay, let's then wrap up with, are there one or two big tips though that you would give to people when they're really thinking about their audience? And it can be summary of things we've talked about or things that you feel like we should have talked about that you'd like to really discuss now.
Yeah, I think it's just to go back to what we've been talking about the whole time is this authenticity word. And you can do it one way or the other. You can focus on who is my audience, or you can start making whatever it is you want to make and then look at your audience and see who they are and then build that avatar. So if you're making science fiction content, just start putting it out there, see who those people are that are watching or listening, and then try to find that same group in other places. So let's say they're mostly 25 to 35, mostly females in this age group. There are ways to go find that audience and show them your content so they now know about you. And again, there are tools that will help you find those, that specific audience. Most of them are paid tools, some are free. You can actually ask Google, or I will send Leah a couple of suggestions.
Yes, so that when we send out the link for this, there will be some other pieces in the email, so that as you're watching and rewatching this fascinating video, you're going to be able to look at some of those resources that are out there. But certainly while there are some free things, there are definitely some things that are worth paying for. You do want to make investments in strategic areas in terms of finding people and
it doesn't come naturally to me. So I'm going to give you advice that I don't naturally do, which is be consistent with your social media around whatever your product is. So I work with people who are phenomenal at it, but when it comes to my own social media, I'm terrible. You'd think after all these years I'd pick something up, but no. I feel like if you can't do it, have someone else do it. But it's very, very important if you're putting a product out there, to keep your social media around it really consistent. So whatever the name of your show is, get that name on all the social platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and just start posting regularly and consistently about your show.
And consistency of the actual content is so important. Like the number of people who start to get some fans, but then, okay, the thing that I promised everybody I would do every Tuesday and Saturday, now I miss some of them, or people, you will start to gather fandom if they know that there are reliable things there, and you will lose it very, very quickly.
And not even lose momentum. This is a very strange thing about internet fandom. They will unfollow you. I don't know why, but I have an old YouTube channel. I used to post things every week, mostly because YouTube would change algorithms or things and never tell anybody. So I was consulting at the time, and I didn't know any other way to keep track of these changes. It was a long time ago. So I would upload a video every week, and suddenly there'd be this new thing that I didn't know existed. But I stopped posting videos, and then I lost thousands of fans. I did all right. I had like 37,000 fans on my YouTube channel. For that time especially, that was very good. And I like 9 years ago. And then every once in a while I get this idea I have to make, and it's like once every 2 years I'll make a short or something. And I will upload it to YouTube.
Yeah.
No, but just because I have to. It's just
Yes.
a creative outlet. It's not a career goal at this point. Maybe someday. But and people would either unsubscribe because they're like, what is this? I don't need to follow a channel that posts once every year, once every 2 years. But mostly it's comments, oh, she's still alive. But that channel that had 38,000 fans, I think has 16,000 now. But it's a combination of YouTube culling some dead channels, but also an internet audience, if you're not consistent, will leave you.
Absolutely.
They won't just, you won't just stop growing, you will lose fans.
Yeah, so consistency. So it is really important as you're thinking about the product that you're making and thinking about your audience and how they will consume it, to set a realistic cadence and realistic goal for how you're going to put your content out there. And so it is better to start slowly and say, I'm going to put something out once every other week, and then know that, yes, you want to follow that up with snippets or teasers on your Instagram or your Twitter for the next one on a somewhat regular basis, so that next 2 weeks from now, you've got new content for them to come to and people really can expect and know about it. It's so critical.
Yes. And if you don't have we're talking about posting on your social media around your product, you don't have to post about your product. Again, if it's a sci-fi show, you can just let's say you're posting every other week on your YouTube channel, as an example, and you want to post 3 times a week on your social media platforms. Let's use Instagram as an example. You can repost other creators' content that you enjoy that's similar to yours, or just something that has to do with what you're doing. It doesn't have to be a snippet of what you are actually doing.
And with the other creators thing, I think that is one last thing to really talk about. And one of the things that we love about Content Marketplace is creators banding together, because this is, again, not really a space where it's an us versus them. It's not like there is one winner of, video game streaming or makeup application or, toy reviews or anything on the internet. There is space for a lot of them. And if you actually start to become colleagues and friends with some of those other people and share their stuff, they're going to share back.
That's right.
That really is a community in a way that your audience can be really similar to their audience, but maybe you're bringing a slightly different group of people along, so they're excited to reach that in the same way that you want their slightly different group of people.
Yeah, and if we're talking about growth on the internet, that is the number one way to grow your audience. It's really no different than when you're watching a TV, or used to watch a TV show, and a character from another show would come on Friends or whatever it was. It's the same exact thing, just a different medium.
Yeah.
You just want to collaborate with other people doing similar things to you.
Well, you guys, that is our masterclass for today. Thank you so much for joining us. And, we look forward to seeing you in August for the next class, as well as in October for Content Marketplace. So thanks so much. And until then, we'll talk to you later.